Content advisory. This video deals with the serial murder of many young boys and men. While graphic information has been kept to a minimum, it may not be suitable for everyone. Please use care when listening. Today I am looking at the astrology of one of the most prolific serial killers of the 20th century, not named Ted Bundy. It deals with the murder of over 30 young men and boys. I'm talking about John Wayne Gacy, also known as the Killer Clown, and how his astrology perfectly matches someone who parades as a clown but with deadly intentions. His case shows how well astrology describes the duality of a person who projects an image quite different from that which lies beneath a well-constructed but deadly facade. John Wayne Gacy was born at 12:29 a.m. on March 17, 1942, in Chicago, Illinois, to Catholic parents of Polish descent. Although born on St. Patrick's Day, there was nothing saintly or honorable about the man. A violent, abusive childhood helped shape him into the monster that would claim at least 33 lives over the span of only a 6-year period, from 1972 to 1978. As a child, Gacy suffered very cruel beatings at the hands of a sadistic alcoholic father who took every opportunity to shame and belittle his only son. Gacy, who was overweight, also endured bullying by his peers at school. This relentless abuse was intolerable for a sensitive double Pisces who already feels vulnerable to the harshness of the world. He grew up nursing a deep-seated rage that he would eventually enact on the poor youngsters whom he murdered, first enticing their friendship with offers of booze, stag films, or jobs in his remodeling business. These visits would then turn into torture sessions where the boys were handcuffed, molested, and eventually strangled. The horrors that police discovered when they searched Gacy's residence was that he had buried 26 bodies in the crawl space underneath his house. Visitors to the house would often complain of a foul odor, which strangely no one ever bothered to investigate. Yet, as an adult, Gacy was a popular man about town. Many found him friendly and likable, and he enjoyed performing as a clown at children's hospitals and charity events. The outwardly entertaining clown persona masked an inner hostility that expressed itself in manipulation, sexual perversion, and cruelty. Gacy also gained influence as a member of certain social groups, especially the JCs and the Loyal Order of Moose. He was an important supporter of the Democratic Party machine in Chicago. He was a social animal, attending many high-profile events, mixing among the higher echelons of politics. One famous photo shows him posing with First Lady Rosalynn Carter, a photo which later caused great embarrassment among Washington's political elite. Gacy generally preferred boys in their early and mid-teens, and he was masterful at finding victims whom he would entice to his house with offers of food, beer, drugs, or porn films. As sexual perverts often do, he was also successful trolling for runaways at the local Greyhound bus station. Gacy's early success in getting away with murder is a disgrace on the judicial system of Chicago and suggests possible favoritism through his political connections. In 1968, he was convicted of sodomy and sentenced to 10 years prison time, but somehow got off after serving only 18 months. This judicial lapse, or favor as it may have been, allowed some 33 murders to take place during a time when he would have otherwise been incarcerated. Through the years, he also committed various sexual assaults on young men that were reported but never prosecuted. It all makes you wonder. Gacy was also known for hosting parties in his home with prominent businessmen, which were also attended by boys. He even confessed to one murder where he and others disposed of the body in a nearby river. In spite of this information, law enforcement never checked out Gacy's named accomplices. After his conviction, he also told law enforcement that 12 other men had keys to his house, but these individuals were never sought out and no accomplices were ever identified or investigated. There was a total of at least 33 victims. 26 were buried under his house, 4 were tossed into a river, and 3 were buried elsewhere. Gacy was convicted of 33 of the murders and executed by lethal injection on May 10, 1994. And in one final release of bitterness and hostility, he went to his death grumbling, "You can kiss my ass." What does Gacy's astrology reveal about his multiple identities as father, husband, civic leader, perverse murderer, and deadly clown? Gacy's birth chart features two stelliums in Pisces and in Gemini. He has Sagittarius rising, and there's a mutable sign on each angle, giving an overabundance of mutable signs in the chart. This shows extreme duality and instability in his behavior, but also the ability to quickly adapt to changing situations. Gacy led multiple lives in many respects. As a respectable twice married man who preferred gay sex, as a father of two who sexually molested and killed teenage boys, as a responsible civic leader who destroyed families with his clandestine perverse activities, and as a serious businessman who played a clown at children's hospitals and charity functions. The chart offers some immediate clues to his dysfunctional behavior. Many key planets are in their detriment and afflicted, which can create pathological patterns of survival in response to crisis. Sagittarius is rising, giving him an outgoing, easygoing countenance, and he was very personable. But chart ruler Jupiter is in detriment in Gemini. He talked a good talk, but didn't walk a very good walk. Jupiter's position at 13 Gemini exactly squares the moon's nodes, so Jupiter is in what we call a nodal degree. Gacy's life trajectory was an aberration, a disconnect from potential positive accomplishments. Jupiter is also important as it rules Pisces too, and so his Sun and Moon dispositor is also damaged, as was his psyche. He was glib, sometimes a braggart, affable, but sometimes condescending. He was a good salesman, which made him successful in his career as owner of a remodeling business, but also successful in being able to lure dozens of innocent young men to their demise. Look at Neptune in Virgo in the 10th house. The focus of his construction business was to remodel and upgrade pharmacies, the cosmetic remodeling of businesses dealing with health and drugs. I love it when astrology gets so literal. Gacy gets a double hit of detriment because weak Jupiter also rules his Sun and Moon, which are conjunct in Pisces, plus his Mercury is in detriment there as well. Detriments do not make people bad people, they just push the planet to perform differently because it's out of its normal comfort zone and it needs to compensate and sometimes struggles to do so. But enough detrimented planets in difficult aspect to each other does exert pressure on the person that may result in subversive behavior. Here, the Pisces Sun and Moon directly oppose the 10th house Neptune in Virgo, and that sets off a stream of challenging behaviors. He tends toward dishonesty, illusion. Neptune opposite the Sun and Moon shows narcissism and a lack of compassion for others. In fact, he never had a bit of remorse for any of his young victims. The opposition well describes such a chameleon like character and made him a perfect candidate to wear the disguise of a clown. The strong emphasis on Pisces also brought out the shadow side, the 12th house of demons and also prisons, where he served two terms, one in the 1970s and one which ended in his death by lethal injection. Lethal injection relates to Neptune, and here it afflicts the fourth house end of life, sun and moon. He also plied his victims with booze and drugs, which he freely indulged in himself. You could say that his behavior of entrapping young men, enticing them to a situation from which they could not escape, and robbing them of their lives, became an addiction for him, as his body count of 33 was staggering for one man. I have some distrust of the lone killer idea in view of his partying ways and political connections, but I digress. Venus in Aquarius can be a sign of unusual sexual preferences or a taste for upending society's norms. Venus trines Jupiter, showing the many partners and victims that he forced himself upon. And with Gemini on the seventh house, we aren't surprised that he had two marriages and left the second one by declaring to his wife that he would no longer engage in heterosexual sex. But like everyone, Gacy had his helpful aspects as well. His detrimented Mercury and Jupiter were in mutual reception, as one rules the other's sign. Gacy was a terrific salesman, an entertainer of sorts, and extremely creative and imaginative. While in prison, he took up painting, as Neptune rules paints. His paintings brought in $100,000, as artwork by serial killers has a huge market demand in some circles. And his subject of study was none other than clowns. He had a strong artistic side that found some positive self expression, as he could no longer pursue his evil boy fantasies while incarcerated. The Sun Moon Neptune affliction also described a helpless boy beaten mercilessly by an alcohol addicted father, and who witnessed much of the same done to his mother. This opposition receives a square from seventh house Black Moon Lilith, which is retrograde in Gemini, creating a T square in mutable signs. And I believe this was the impetus for him to then act out his internalized aggressions on boys and young men, in effect turning the table from victim to predator who could now be finally in control. In the sixth house lies a Saturn Uranus conjunction, which is disturbing, as its midpoint conjoins the malefic fixed star Algol. Algol is a star of violence and brutality, and often references the loss of one's head, literally and otherwise, which involves the throat, ruled by Venus. Gacy's preferred manner of murder was strangulation, also under Algol's rule. Gacy's minor planets or asteroids continue this portrait of an unstable killer clown. The Pisces sun opposes not only Neptune, but Bacchus, god of wine and debauchery, and Ambrosia, ruler of intoxicating drinks and nectars. His father drank, and he used drink and drugs to entrap his victims. There's also a darkly humorous side to the asteroids. The photo of Gacy with Rosalind Carter is just one example. His sun conjoins the asteroid Rosalind. Saturn at 24 Taurus is conjunct asteroid Leopoldina, which calls to mind the infamous 1924 murder case of Leopold and Loeb, two highly intelligent members of wealthy Chicago families who killed a 14-year-old boy just for a thrill. Gacy murdered many boys in that same age group. The named asteroids often make interesting connections to similar life situations. Since you've watched the video thus far, I thought I'd point out to you my new book on asteroids, how they may be interpreted, what is their history, and what are the myths that form the basis for their interpretations. Gacy's Gemini Mars forms a square to asteroid Phao, showing that his actions stem from a pathological need to release pent up emotions and hostilities towards others. Mars also opposes asteroid Robert, which is very interesting. Gacy's most consequential victim was Robert Peast. After he had gotten away with several murders and assaults, it was finally the disappearance and murder of Robert Peast that finally set the police on Gacy's trail. There was also at least one other victim named Robert. Asteroid Elatus conjoins the ascendant and shows us how descriptive the asteroids can be. Elatus was a centaur who was killed by a shot from a poisoned arrow, and similarly, Gacy was put to death by lethal injection, another type of poisoned arrow. Mercury conjoins asteroid Antiope, which relates to being imprisoned against one's will. First, Gacy imprisoned his victims, and then in turn, he too was imprisoned. Saturn trines the lusty asteroid Eros, showing a karmic element to Gacy's enormous sex drive and his perverted preferences. And his Pisces moon trines asteroid Titania, which needs no explanation. At the end, the monstrous behavior that sprang from the depths of his subconscious brought him down like the Titanic and into the depths of the afterlife. If you're interested in learning more about me or how I do my work, here are some useful references. Links are also in the description below. I am BD Salerno, and thanks for watching.